Hello, everybody. It's wonderful to gather everyone on a kind of a great, wonderful Friday afternoon as we're about to head into a weekend. Fabulous time together out here at Sundance again, 2024. I'm John Partilla. I'm the CEO of Screen Vision Media, and we're very, very delighted to play a small part in the partnership between Hyundai and The Hollywood Reporter as we embark on a very, very interesting discussion with the Producers Guild of America. And I don't know tons about the intricacies of this business, but what I do know is that the people that work in this business really are the ones that make it happen, that bring together the art and the craft and the sweat and the blood to produce such great works of art that we all get to enjoy, that really, I think, celebrate and inspire what is so important and interesting in our culture today. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the moderator and head of our panel, which is Chris Gardner, the senior staff writer of The Hollywood Reporter, who will do an amazing job, I know, today and drive a very, very interesting conversation for us all. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction, John, and thank you so much for being here, and thanks to Hyundai and Screen Vision Media for helping us do this. I also, like you said, we're going to drive a good panel for the nice tie-in with Hyundai. I feel like everyone is here. We got the talent in the building, and now our job is just to produce a good panel. So we got the right people for that. I'm going to introduce today's panelists. I'm so happy that they're all here, starting with the one and only Stephanie Allain, who is the president of the Producers Guild. And she's also here this year with a movie called Exhibiting Forgiveness, which we can't wait to dig into. Fred Hechinger, who's an actor that stars in a Sundance title called Thelma. And his producer, Zoë Worth, also from Thelma, and they had their big premiere last night and another screening this morning. We want to talk to them about how it went. Sara Bernstein has a movie here as well, Frida. She's also the president of Imagine Documentaries, correct? I like to tell people what they do for a living while I look at them. Yeah, this is what you do. I think in Sundance, everybody needs to be told what they're doing and when. So, Stacey Reiss, who also had a movie here a couple years ago, not The Perfection. That was your last project, but before that, you had a movie here.
I had Spaceship Earth here in 2020,
and then in 2016.
In 2016, I had The Eagle Huntress and Suited, both here.
Right. Year. Thanks for being here. I can't wait to hear about those, and especially the one in 2020, which was acquired by Neon, so we'll talk about that. Datari Turner, welcome. How are you? So happy you're here. He has a movie called Luther, Never Too Much, which is premiering here at the festival. The very first ever full-length documentary about Luther Vandross. And Shivani Rawat, who is it's amazing that you're here, that we're seeing her in one place. She has 3 movies here this year, so thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here. She has a movie called Love Me, which premiered earlier this afternoon with Kristen Stewart and Stephen Yeun, so I want to hear about how that went. And I also want to say thanks again to everyone who's here. I know that there's a lot of very smart people in this room, not to intimidate anyone. So I'm going to start with Stephanie, just in case there's people in this room who may not actually know what a producer does. I hate to start with such a silly question, but let's pretend that you were at the Pendry Bar and you met the president of a marketing division. They're like, I've always wanted to know exactly what does a producer do? How would you answer that?
I would answer everything. Yeah. What don't we do? I think the producer is the uber champion of the film. And what that means is when I have a project, no one gets in that circle unless they love the movie, they understand the movie, they can contribute 150% to the movie, and just to make sure that the circle that we create for our director to go do his or her thing or their thing is a safe space and gives them the opportunity to do their best work. So what do? We work on the script, we work on casting, we go by the costume department, we work on the budget, we work on the locations, everything that happens on a movie, a producer touches. That's not an answer, but that's what it is, right?
That's the best answer. And then as PGA president, what are your duties?
Susan, what are my duties? Where is she? Susan is the CEO. Okay, she's the CEO of.
She's the boss.
She's the boss. I work for her. Donald and I are co-presidents together, but we each have the president title. And basically, we just advocate for producers. Our biggest cause right now. A lot of you guys are producers, so I'm sure you know this, but producers are the only line item on a budget that has no minimum and no health insurance. How can that be? We have no collective bargaining organization. So what the PGA does is educates and advocates for producers. And right now, we are working hard to figure out how we can make sure that when a producer is on set, that person is covered, just like the PA is covered.
It's a big job. By the way, speaking of educating and advocating, I think Stephanie has been educating me on her career, her work, her films, the industry. I think I've interviewed you my entire career. We are the same age. But I was just thinking, listening to you talk and thinking just the fact that we're sitting here in Sundance and all the venues that I have interviewed you and bugged you about your work. Congratulations for coming back another year. How many Sundances have you been to?
No, I was my husband. We were trying to count them. And literally, we couldn't. I'm gonna have to look, but I don't know, 8, 10, something like that. All first-time directors, and as is Titus Kaphar, who directed Exhibiting Forgiveness, who is a first-time director, but a master painter, a master American painter. And the movie is by far, I think, the best thing I've ever produced in my career. And I can't wait for people to see it tomorrow. Tomorrow, 3 o'clock.
That's a bold statement coming from you, looking at your enviable resume. And I actually thought of you last night. I covered opening night, the gala where Christopher Nolan and Kristen Stewart and a bunch of people, Celine Song, got awards. And Christopher Nolan said something interesting about how he doesn't classify himself as an independent filmmaker, and he doesn't think that's a thing because filmmakers are so dependent on other people. And he said poets can be independent, painters can be independent. And I was like, Stephanie Allain has a independent movie with a painter. So this is like speaking directly to you. As a producer, how does your job change when you're producing a film with a first-time filmmaker who doesn't actually, who may not know? I mean, he directed shorts, but this is his
He directed
feature.
one short. My job is always the same, it changes a little based on who the person is and what the task is, but it's basically the same. Just nurture, support, challenge, and get shit done. That's what I do, and I love it.
That's the headline, you guys. Get shit done. Let's move on to the team from from Thelma, Zoe and Fred. And Fred I got the name right, Fred Hechinger. Did you guys see that? Hear that? First of all, congratulations. You seem so relaxed and calm considering the last 24 hours that you have experienced. So let's go back. First
Really?
Of all, yeah, yeah, you do. Is something happening inside?
I think it might be exhaustion.
That happens here. So tell me about last night was the big premiere. How did it go?
I think it was great. I mean, it was really fun. This was by far the biggest audience we've seen Thelma with. We've had only a few friends and family screenings so far, and it was a blast. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I really love this festival, and it's I think you dream that you can. It's kind of everything you're saying about nurturing. Like every movie is a little bit like a orphan child, and like the only way that it's gonna come to life and have a good life is if a big group of people come together and just care about it, nonstop for a long period of time, and it's very strange always, I find, to then be able to, if you're lucky, release it and show it on a big screen with people and no longer have to be the only people caring about it. Right. And last night it kind of felt like other people did too, and that was an amazing feeling.
That's good. And I heard this morning screening was a lot of tears and a different kind of energy, right?
Yeah, I mean, we showed up to the Prospector for the Q&A, and we walked in. Josh, the writer-director, escorted in June Squibb, who's the lead titular character, Thelma, walked her in down the aisle, and it was to a standing ovation, full tears. It was just a really magical moment and a electric Q&A with a lot of great questions. And it was a different energy. Last night felt kind of rah-rah, and this felt, I don't know, maybe more intimate because of the smaller theater. It was just cool. It was a really different vibe, and super, super special.
I love a matinee in
Yeah.
general. Oh, it's an amazing. I mean, it's like you wake up early, you see a movie, and then the rest of the day you're like, I already saw a movie. Like my day's good.
That's true. That's true. And forgive me, I'm not doing my job very well because I didn't describe the fact, like the big coup of this film is that you got the legendary June Squibb at the ripe old age of 91?
94.
94. 94.
94,
Thank you
yes.
for fact checking me. To star in this movie playing Thelma. So tell me just first, like, how difficult was it to get her in this movie? I know. I also just love the story. If you want to give it a long wind up, because I love how this movie came together with these weekly writing sessions with you and the director over many months, right, during the pandemic.
Yes. So, yes, Josh Margolin is a close friend of mine, and a lot of the people sitting here, including my producing partner, Chris Kay, we have a writing workshop that meets weekly, but this kind of idea of meeting weekly and workshopping things together, a supportive group of friends, is something that I've done actually since graduating college. So I went to NYU, where I ran a theater company called The Collectin for a few years, and I did a similar thing, and then moved back to LA, started a Sunday night group that became a Thursday night group, and now we have kind of a small, intimate version of a similar thing. And the idea behind it is to kind of keep each other accountable for writing deadlines that are kind of for yourself, outside of the business, outside of what your agent wants or a job, and keep encouraging each other to write and finish that draft, and just do it for ourselves. And Josh brought in what was already a magnificent draft of Thelma out the gate, and Chris and I were looking to make something together. We really wanted to produce a small independent movie together, and when we read it, we were like, it should be this. And of course, it was in the middle of the pandemic. The lead actress is in her 90s. It presented some challenges, but the challenge of securing June in the role and then working with June was not one of those challenges. That kind of electrified and made the process happen. She was the first one in, followed by Fred, after we started developing the script. And from there, the movie was just, off to the races.
Fred, this is not a producer question. I just am so desperate to know this from you because I watched this movie and it's so great, you guys. Congratulations.
Thanks.
I saw it before the festival at home. I had a grandmother, much like Thelma, who has since passed. And seeing you, I was reminded that it doesn't ever feel like you're acting. It just feels like you live in these scenes and you live in that family, and your talent is just, it sort of emanates from the screen. And I was reminded how it was so similar to your work in The White Lotus, and I'm just curious because that show changed your life, I assume, and now you're off to Gladiator 2 and Craven the Hunter and doing all these big, and you're at Sundance, starring in Thelma, which is a big accomplishment. So tell me, how has your life changed since The White Lotus?
Thank you. That's really kind of you. Yeah, immensely. I mean, I think it's similar to. It's hard to like exactly put a grasp on, but I really think like the exciting challenge always is how do you make films that are truly unique, and not to crash this conversation with acting, but I think that there is a connection, but at least maybe between producing and acting in that sense, which is that like you're always looking for projects that only exist, like the story only exists through that filmmaker and through that world. And I think being able to do something like White Lotus only led to being able to kind of continue to be more specific and hopefully more unique with each experience. And I know in getting to help produce along with this and be able to work together on this, it was definitely the kind of experience on Thelma where like I believe that the process becomes the product. And so the feeling that you create on set, we filmed the first week of this movie in Josh, our director's, his actual grandmother's condo, which is where he made these documentary shorts beforehand, which inspired the movie. So the first week of filming was this kind of spiritual connection to the actual location of his family and his history and his life. And I'm of the belief that that is felt in the film, and I think that's always a mark of producing, because you have to decide what environment can we create, as you said, to nurture something, and how do you make inspired, intentional, and creative choices from a logistical standpoint.
Spoken like a true
Beautifully
producer,
said.
you guys, right? A round of applause for Fred, launching his producing career in the Hollywood Reporter Hyundai Lounge. By the way, I know that you produced a movie that went to Toronto as well with your friends. So, do you, sitting amongst this esteemed and accomplished group of producers, do you see yourself continuing to do this throughout your career?
I love that part of it. I really do. I mean, I have found that sometimes if it's the right job, they really connect, and like your knowledge of it by acting in it mixed with your knowledge of all the prep period and getting to bring everybody together and make sure that they get what they need to do their job in the best way and for the entire crew. I find that they really speak hand in hand a lot of time, and I would absolutely love to eventually also be able to do it more and sometimes foster films that I'm not acting in, because there's so many filmmakers that, that's why I love this festival. It's like, at the end of the day, I think we're all probably just like movie nerds. Like the feeling of being in a dark room and seeing something that's alive and shocking and makes you feel in that way is like, that's what you're chasing. And I think if you remember that, that's hopefully, I think, what producing is somewhat connected to. So yeah, I love doing it, and I would love to continue to.
I think that was a nod of approval from Stephanie Allain, the boss over here. Thank you, and congratulations, you guys. And then somebody who knows a lot about what it feels like to be at Sundance when the lights go low is Stacey Reiss. Congratulations on everything, your whole Sundance history. But let's go back to 2020 with the movie that sold to Neon. I mean, first of all, what did you learn from that experience? I mean, that was also before everything changed. January 2020 feels like a lifetime ago.
I want to say that some of the actors I've worked with are the best producers, so I think it's such an interesting relationship. So, I'm always interested. One of the actors I worked with went on to direct and had a film that was a short here last year. So I feel like none of us should be we're a producer, we're an actor, we're a director, we're all creators, and I think it's a very fluid process. So congratulations. I just wanted to say that because I was thinking when you were speaking. But back to 2020.
Yeah, spaceship
in the
to
before
Earth.
times.
Before times,
the
yeah.
before times of
Yeah.
2020. It's always exciting to come to the festival with a film that's made independently, and and this is a marketplace, and sometimes I think we forget that because there are lots of films that come here with distribution, but when you come here as a producer and you don't have distribution, and you are sitting in the theater at your premiere, and you're like, I hope people in this room are moved by this film, want to buy this film, people are going to see this film. Many films come to this festival, and unfortunately, they don't get seen beyond the festival. So I never sort of take for granted that I'm in that room the night of the premiere and that the film's going to sell. And with Spaceship Earth, which Radical Media, I produced it with Radical Media, where now I'm an executive producer, but that was before I joined Radical Media, and we were partners on the movie. We were all in there and on the edge of our seat and thinking, I hope this resonates. And Neon was a very early, and they were sort of calling us leading up to the festival, like, we're interested in this film. We're like, you can see it at the premiere at Sundance. We're not showing it to you beforehand. Because we all know seeing a movie with an audience makes all the difference.
Wait, let's stay on that for a second, because there might be a lot of people here who don't know why people take that strategy. Like, why would a producer want to hold on to a movie and say, I know you're interested, but I'm gonna just get into the screening, I'll give you a ticket, instead of doing a big screening in LA beforehand or sending out links? What's the strategy?
I think if you really believe in the film that you've made, and like any producer, really, you spend so much time and energy and late nights and sleepless nights making this film. I think we all believe in our film, and your film's coming to Sundance, which once you have the Sundance, seal of approval, this is the most incredible place to premiere a film. I think you sort of feel like, I'm gonna take my chances, and I'm gonna take it to a festival, and I'm gonna show it in the room with people. And there are certain films that I think particularly resonate in a room, in a room with an audience, and not have buyers just watching it on links while they're also checking their phone, or they're making dinner, or it kind of drives me crazy when I think about that. So I would always personally rather someone watch it with an audience in a room, but obviously it was a strategy with our sales team too.
Yeah, and Sundance is sort of famous for that lobby negotiating session, which I don't know happens quite as much anymore in the era of smartphones and eavesdroppers. It used to, right? It was like a
Hustle
It's
and
really
Flow.
fun.
Am I here? Hustle and Flow was one of those lobby negotiations
Yeah.
and one of those amazing Eccles screenings where everybody in the room had passed and everybody in the room wanted it. And then we spent that night. We didn't do, after the screening, we just went to the party and partied, just to celebrate that we made the movie and we got here. Because I think sometimes we're always thinking in the future, always thinking about what's next. And sometimes it's good to just sit in the moment. We're here. We're at Sundance, right?
Well, I would like, if I can jump in for a second, as a former buyer, because I was at HBO for almost 20 years, I do think that that strategy is really important, because I think what Stacey was saying just about eventizing, I think as a producer, the more you can do to make your film feel like the event at Sundance, and the more that you can do to make buyers feel like, I have to go to that screening, or I have to schlep to the Cinetic house to watch something because they're not going to send me a link. I think the more the anticipation really grows for those buyers, and it's all about the buzz, and it's all about feeling like, well, someone else is going to get to it first. So I have to make sure as a buyer I'm in the room.
Can you open the door? I'm gonna walk in. During your tenure at HBO, do you remember, or what was the most memorable acquisition deal-making moment you had?
There were so many, unfortunately. I'm trying to think. Well, it's funny because this is probably my 23rd Sundance. And it remains the premier launching pad for documentaries, I think, like in the country and probably in the world. So that excitement, and to have Frida here this year was such a thrill. But I think, I think one of the first films that I was part of at HBO was a film called Born Rich, which I don't know if anyone remembers this. Ivanka Trump was in it. That's all I'm going to say. But Jamie Johnson, who was a Johnson & Johnson heir, made this film about himself and his peers, and it was probably the first time anyone was allowed inside certainly young people who grew up in some of the wealthiest families of the world. And there were lines around the block to get into the screening at Sundance. And back then, HBO was probably one of the only places that could probably buy that film. But nonetheless, it was still like an exciting, acquisition. Because you could feel that project or that film was going to blow up and be something big, and it was for us at that point at HBO. Yeah.
How does it feel to be here this year with another film, and also as your role as the president of Imagine Documentaries?
It's so sweet to be here as a producer with a film, and also in my current role at Imagine. I think, you all know here, as producers, we're moving mountains. It takes a village to make these films. And I think being really on the ground level up, from inception to production to post-production to actually premiering, is probably the greatest experience you could have in this business.
And you have a knack for, I know you throughout your career, you've been involved in projects that focus a lens on a story, a person, somebody like Frida Kahlo, who has been investigated in all forms throughout the decades, but finding new ways to tell that story. So much of your work, whether it's been news stories or anyway, this is one of those examples. But tell me why you decide to do that, and what new are you presenting about Frida through this piece? I know there's some ephemera and some never before seen material.
Yeah, no, I think that's always the challenge, right? Especially with documentaries. Like, what are we going to bring to the table that's different? And I think to tackle an icon like Frida Kahlo, one of the greatest artists in the world, certainly one of the most iconic artists in the world, you really do have to think about what is going to be different about this project. And really to the credit of our fantastic director, Carla Gutierrez, she always wanted to tell Frida's story in Frida's own words. And she really thought about what could we do that someone else hasn't done before. And I think this film really is a first-person exploration Frida. I think we're inside her mind. We're privy to her diaries, her letters, and you really sort of experience her life through her own narrative. So I think that's really special. And also I think the way that Carla and our team were able to really illustrate her life through her art. There's this exceptional animation, I think it's exceptional, animation in the film that I think really brings her, her artistry to life, but really I think her probably most intimate thoughts.
I can't wait to see it, and congratulations. And making it through your you said 22nd?
Yeah,
That's a
I
big
think
deal. But when you were talking, you also provided a perfect segue to go to Datari, because thinking about, he's here with Luther, the Luther Vandross Never Too Much documentary, and so much of what she said is sort of what you guys do in your film, to, presenting the life of somebody who hasn't, kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, who hasn't been investigated in that way, but is investigated through a lot of their own life and material and songs. So first of all, congratulations. I also know you're kind of getting up there. This is 11 Sundances for you, or?
Yeah, I've had
11
this will be my 11th film in the festival.
It's a big
but
deal.
I think I've been to maybe 13 or 14 because I'm one of the board members for the Black House Foundation. So we're here pretty much every year. But yeah, 11 films.
I don't want to ask you the why of putting this movie together, because that's kind of obvious, right? Everybody would want to see the Luther Vandross story told because it hasn't been done in that way. But the question I want to ask you is how. I mean, did you work with his estate? How did you get this off the ground?
Yeah, well, the story. So my partner Jamie Foxx, we have a first look deal with Sony Pictures, and the quick version is I was in a meeting with Tom Rothman, who's the chairman, and Sanford, the president of the studio, and they were like, we want to do music biopics, and Luther, growing up, was my parents' favorite singer. Luther and Marvin Gaye. And so I, mentioned what about doing a Luther biopic? And they both said, well, we should connect you with Tom McKay on the music side, because he and Colin Firth's company are working on trying to put together a Luther doc. And Jed Doherty, who's in the audience right here, who is Colin Firth's producing partner, who also used to be chairman of Sony Pictures International, and his partner Trish as well. Tom connected us together. I think it's been years ago. So connected us, we hit it off, had some mutual friends, and both shared the passion of trying to get this doc to the finish line. And then we went through trying to budget it and how much could we make it for, and then went through the process of interviewing filmmakers, and then landed upon Don Porter, who's incredible.
What was the biggest challenge in putting all that together? Because I mean, with music documentaries, there is established data on how well they do, where they go, which homes take them distributor-wise. So what was the biggest challenge for you in kind of getting a green light eventually?
Well, I can speak for me and Jamie. I've produced almost 40 narrative films, but this was my first documentary. Well, actually, we have a number in production now, but when we started the process, this was my first documentary film, and it's different than narrative. Like you sort of don't know what you have, Like, Jed obviously was very close to the Luther estate, and obviously Sony controlled all of the music. But again, you got to go through the archive, and as you get into interviews, it's completely different than putting a narrative movie together, where you read the script and you sort of, you have a clear vision of, the film and how to cast it and put it together. I've known Stephanie for a very long time. She's obviously a legend in the business, and even when I started my career, I think you did one of my very first. You interviewed me when you were running the LA Film Festival at the beginning of my career. But yeah, this was just a different process, because you can look at a cut of the movie and you're like, okay, well, this isn't it. We got to go back in. And Jed, you know, like I said, there's a lot of talented, creative people involved, but we made a special film. I'm really, really proud of it. And I think people will watch the film and see things and discover things about Luther that they did not know.
And is there lots of music?
I mean, we were fortunate because, you know, we made it with the estate and, you know, having access to all of his music. And so the music, as you guys know, is incredible and all time, you know, just, you know, he's legendary. So, and then we were able to get a lot of tier 1 interviews for the film. Obviously, Jamie Foxx, who was a massive Luther fan, and, you know, obviously, in addition to being an Academy Award-winning actor, had a, you know, incredible music career and won multiple Grammys. And his first actual #1 hit, he had Luther in the hook. It was the song he did with Kanye West, Slow Jams, where he says, Marvin Gaye, some Luther Vandross. So I mean, Luther was very, you know, definitely like a big inspiration for him and his music career. And yeah, we made this movie with love. Everybody really was passionate about it. So,
Shivani, hi. I feel like after your schedule, saving you until the end gives you some time to like just relax.
Thank you.
And I just am even more grateful that you are sitting here considering your schedule and today as well. So to remind everybody, she has 3 films here: Hitman, the Richard Linklater starring Glenn Powell; Love Me with Kristen Stewart and Stephen Yeun, which debuted earlier today; and Winner, which is
Susanna Fogel starring Emilia Clarke.
Susanna Fogel, who was here last year with Cat Person, is back a year later with a really remarkable story, the narrative version of a rip from the headlines, like high-profile news story. Hi. I wanted to ask you, first of all, in my many years of going to film festivals and poring over directories and entries and submissions and reading the hot lists and doing all the reporting, I don't think I've ever read a movie description quite like Love Me. So I'm just going to read it and then ask you how you went around, you know, pitching this movie and putting this together. So I don't know if everyone's read this, but the Love Me, it stars Kristen Stewart and Stephen Yeun. Long after humanity's extinction, a buoy and a satellite meet online and fall in love. What does that mean?
I think it, you know, it's just a very compelling love story. I'll just put it as simple as that. And what drew me to the project was we were deep in pandemic in 2020, and I got a call from a friend who's involved in the project, and she said, I want to send you this script. Please read it and let me know what you think about it. It's first-time directors. And when I started my company, Shivani's Pictures, I promised myself I will work with first-time directors. And you know, we were like, okay, let's read this script and see what it's all about. When I read it and I gave it to my co-producer, we both called each other crying. And we're like, this is a beautiful love story. We're actually, I don't want to give out a lot, but we're actually, you know, rooting for a buoy and satellite to get together. And, you know, we knew Kristen was attached at that time. She had, you know, shown a keen interest in the film. And then we met Andy and Sam, you know, Zuccaros, the director, and just meeting them on Zoom and on that little screen and just seeing the passion they had for this project, I couldn't say no, because we were all, the world was turning upside down. We didn't know what our next step would be. And having these Zoom calls, which was so new to all of us, just talking to our directors, they were so passionate and they had a vision. And it just makes my life as a producer easier because I'm believing in the project, but if my directors are equally intrigued, and they intrigue me and they're compelling, it makes it easier. It makes my job easier. And yeah, we went to Steve Yeun, and he was, you know, he said he wanted to work with Kristen, so it was like a win-win case for us. And yeah, we're here at Sundance now after 4 years.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank
And how
you.
was today?
Amazing. I'm still shaking, so the reviews are still coming in. But you know, it's you have to see the film. It's, you know, it's got a lot of moving pieces, beautiful performances, and I think both Kristen and Stephen, for that matter, have had such a, you know, the past few weeks he's had, you know, it's been great for him, and just seeing them, it's beautiful, you know. And Sam and Andy, they're just such great directors, and they're just visionary, and just being there, you know, sort of just being in this project all together, we just became so close because we started production in 2021 in Vancouver. And this is, again, during pandemic, where we were like in this stage, just all closed, just going home from set, back and forth, not, really talking to anyone else. And now we're here after 3 years. It's just so special. We were just all emotional, definitely.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You also did something very, did you want to say something? Yeah.
Oh, no, I was just saying, congratulations. That's impressive to have
Yeah.
3 movies at the festival 1 year.
Congratulations to everyone. All of you, everyone. You also were being very careful. And I want to make this a producer's question, because you said something that I think a lot of people have said about this movie, is like, you just have to see it. And the messaging around it has been, has not revealed very much. And I know, because my colleagues saw it. So I know that it's mixed media in some parts. So talk to me as a producer, how closely you stay to the messaging of the movie and not giving away too much, and how you're protective over what gets out there in the marketing in order to, protect what you have created with the artists.
No, absolutely. I think it was a collective decision. When we were throughout the filmmaking process, Kristen Stewart gets recognized everywhere she goes. So we had to be very careful with that. Luckily, this was during pandemic, so there weren't a lot of people. But even when we decided that we want to come to a festival, we didn't do any pre-screenings before. Today was the first day the press watched it. And of course, we were getting a lot of calls. But again, everyone here said that it's important when you make a film, you've done all the sweating and the late nights, you believe in it, and your directors, you just collaboratively decide. We're going to keep it a hush-hush movie, and we're going to go out to a beautiful festival like Sundance and just show it to the crowd and have the critics and everyone see it. I think it's great. It's for the best for the film. So we stuck to that decision.
And then talk to me about the decision with producing Winner, which I mentioned is a story that has been out there. There was another movie that has gotten a lot of critical attention too, called Reality Winner, starring Sydney Sweeney. Yeah. I had an old man moment just then, and I was like, oh yeah, Euphoria. So tell me about that. Like, why choose to investigate a story that has, or produce a film that has already existed and is out there in the ether, and how you feel about the competition?
So our film is different. It's based on Reality Winner, but I was, brought to this project again as a financier producer, and when I met Susanna Fogel, who's the director, I was more intrigued by, of course, reality story, but at the same time, Susanna's humor attached to the film, and this is not a dry political drama. It's not. It's a dramedy, and I feel like we need to show this film. It's so apt with what's going on, and especially with with what happens with reality. And everyone's going to see it tomorrow. But I feel like Susanna's humor and like the way we've shown reality as a high school student, how she grows and what happens in her life later in life. So it's like literally her growing. And I think both Emilia and Susanna's direction is just impeccable. And you have to see this film. It's not a dry political drama. It's humor. It's got the funny moments, and you'll get to see realities, vague and funny choices in the film as well. Yeah.
Congratulations again, you guys. We've gotten to hear from everyone, and I could do this all day, but because I only got through like half my questions from each person. So, but let's just spice it up a little bit, shall we? We'll do like a little lightning round, some general producer questions, not directed at anyone in particular, unless you make some sort of motion or head nod, then I'm going to call you out. But like, just to, if you hear the question, you're like, I got this one, let's just jump in. Troubleshooting is your forte as producers, actors too. Can you explain one issue, scene, deal point, especially disaster from the set that came up that you had to solve? And how did you do it?
Stephanie, I would just say this, because like Stephanie said, I think producers I think there's 4 things you got to be. You got to be an entrepreneur, because you got to go out and raise money, especially if you're making independent movies. If you can't raise money, even if you got great taste, you're not going to be able to be a successful producer, I don't believe. You got to be a janitor, because you spend your whole, it's a blue collar job, like you're cleaning up, excuse my French, shit all day long. Like, you got to be a janitor. You got to be a therapist, because, like, especially working with first time filmmakers, which is been my forte, and pretty much all of the filmmakers here, all the producers here. You got to be a therapist. You got to give people, if a filmmaker is making their first movie, they haven't done this before, right? And so someone like Stephanie, who has seen everything, is going to be, you got to be a coach as well, so you got to be those 4 things. I think those are the main 4 ingredients, I think: entrepreneur, janitor, coach, and therapist. And I think if you have those things in your mind, you can tackle every problem.
So here's specific. You wanted a specific instance. On Hustle and Flow, if you guys remember, there's a moment when DJ throws one of his girls out of the house, and the baby too. And John Singleton, my dear friend, flew in Catwoman stunt lady, so that not only could he put her out the house, but he would kick her down the stairs and she'd go rolling. And I was like, oh, no, this is our lead character, even though he is a certain guy, he's not going to do that. And John was saying yes, and I was saying no, and Craig was in the middle, and finally it was the only day Craig's mother was on set. So I said, let's let Craig's mom decide. And everybody said, okay. So we went over, and we talked to her, and she was like, oh, yeah, no, we're going with Steph. And we sent the stunt lady home, and what's in the movie is in the movie. So, but we had to shut production down because we couldn't, I was just not going to let him roll camera on that. And it was one of those moments where you're just like, ooh, this is the real grappling with artists and with actors, and you're out there, and the whole crew is there standing around watching you. And as a producer, you just have to have in your heart the movie, not relationships. You have to have the movie in your heart. And if you know the movie is going to be in trouble, you have to do what you have to do. So that's just a little incidence of my life.
We love an incident from your life, and I love a producer's handbook. Does anybody else have a specific anecdote or something that they would add to the producer's handbook of what qualities make a great producer?
I
Zoe?
feel like I'm just learning so much from this talk.
Yeah.
I'm just taking notes.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing we talked about on our movie, it's actually a saying from my mom, which was keep the main thing the main thing. And that's what that's kind of, just translating it back into my language, what Stephanie's saying, trying to keep the main thing, because there's so much noise. And you do have to deal with the noise. You have to deal with something that's happening. But then at the end of the day, this is the job, and the movie needs to happen, and the movie needs to be the vision. And that's number one.
And I would just say you have to protect the creative. And I think, working closely with a lot of directors, I also like to work with first-time directors. But you have to, kind of shield them. You're a little bit of like a superhero shield for, and you want to keep that creative bubble creative. And you don't want things about this person didn't show up to work today, or this person has COVID, or we don't have money in our bank account to pay our crew, or whatever that is. You don't want to tell the director. They need to keep their vision. And I think sometimes it's hard when you're handling all of that to not, to the person you're often closest to on the set, be like, you're not going to believe what I'm dealing with right now, or you're not going to believe that this person didn't show up to work today, but you kind of want to protect it as long as you can.
You guys, this has been so wonderful. Because it's a group discussion, we're going to end with one more question, and we're going to hear from everyone. Because, and maybe it's a little cheesy, but I always like these kind of questions because they feel like, the nuts and bolts of what you do hasn't changed, but what a producer's job has changed in the current landscape, whether it's, streaming or whether it's COVID, all the things that you have to do change from time to time. So it's going to be personal. If you could go back and give yourself some advice when you were starting out at the beginning of your career, what would you say to that younger person? We're going to start with Shivani and go this way. Sorry to put you on the spot.
No worries. I think believe in your projects, but don't get too emotional. That's one thing I'll tell myself. When you get too emotionally attached to your project, sometimes you can make decisions which, you would later in life regret. But believe in them, but don't get too emotional. Always have a middle line, a balance.
Thank you.
Kid, relax. It's all gonna work out. You can and you don't have to hit home runs to go to the Hall of Fame. You can go to the Hall of Fame getting base hits. So.
That's great. And just called Jamie Foxx with the plane. Stacey?
I always like this expression, leap and a net will appear. I feel like it took me a while to take risks, and I would have taken risks earlier.
I think, I'm not sure my answer, but I think my answer has something to do with trusting your gut for both good and bad. Like, if you think something's not necessarily going to be great, but there's some weird, oblique reason that you think it's strategic to do, those aren't really the best choices. That actually the belief in the project itself, keeping the main thing, and seeing something through is what I would tell myself maybe 10 years ago to, keep that the North Star, and try not to get gamified. Try not to be so externally minded.
Fred?
That there is no answer in a textbook somewhere, that the human answer is the one that is most helpful and most specific. And so to be very, very present to the needs and desires and life of each specific project.
I love this guy. I would have told myself to trust that I was creative. I was a young mother, and I spent a lot of time nurturing, and that sort of rolled over into my directors, and I never really sort of sat and thought, well, I was a closet writer for years. I was a closet writer. I finally, I don't know, maybe, I don't even know how long ago it was, maybe when I was 50. So 15 years ago, I told my agent, I'm a writer. And I gave him my script, and it was actually Charles King, I think. And he said it was great. And then I started having these meetings, and I was like, oh, I am a writer. And they got into the Writers Guild because I was writing stuff. It was so amazing. And I still write. I have a book coming out this year called Who's in Charge? I am. And so I would just say, do everything you want to do. Don't be scared. That's what I would say.
And I would just say probably don't sweat the small stuff, because I think maybe all of us probably have some of the greatest jobs in the world. And how lucky are we that we get to be, living, existing in this creative world and premiering films at Sundance. So just to remind myself that.
Beautiful. And how lucky am I? I'm gonna steal that. How lucky am I that you guys all came in today to join us on this panel? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
You're so great.
Thank you.